Years ago, when I was young and the world was young and dinosaurs ruled the earth, while I was growing up at Kernersville, this is what I'd do on the 4th of July. At 9 in the morning, the town parade would start, and my sister, my brother, and I would all have gone to the Quaker meeting house to watch. We'd go to the church, as we called it, because it was a short walk from our house along a secluded side street, and we didn't have to worry about having our parents go with us once we got up a little bit in age. Well, I say that we would go to watch the parade, but that's not quite true. At least that's not all we did. You see, as the parade entries would pass us, a lot of them would throw out all kinds of candy. And all the kids who were there would scramble to grab as much as they possibly could. We were kids, of course. Of course we grabbed all the candy we could possibly get. It was kind of like having Halloween in the middle of the summer. Then we walked back home. When we got a bit bigger and were beginning to outgrow the parade and the mad scramble for candy, after the day started to cool because the sun was getting ready to set, we'd walk back to the meeting house in order to watch the town fireworks. Now, it just so happens that the Kernersville meeting is located on Main Street, and its front yard is a perfect vantage point for watching the fireworks as well as watching the parade. You get to see most of the show, but you don't have to worry so much about the noise or the traffic snarls attendant on trying to get away from the elementary school yard, where a lot of the town would gather to watch the fireworks. They probably still do, for all I know. Now, the reason I'm telling you all this is to remind you of the best points of our country's reputation around the world until recently. It was a different time back then. Now, we Quakers are justly proud of the post-World War I relief work which we spearheaded following Herbert Hoover's lead. And if you remember, or you know your history, Herbert Hoover was the best ex-president we ever had before Carter. Okay, before Cousin Jimmy. But the good reputation didn't just accrue to us Quakers. All Americans shared in it as well. Maybe it had something to do with what is probably the best known sonnet in the whole of American literature, and I'll bet you know which one it is. Not like the brazen giant of Greek fame with conquering limbs astride from land to land, here at our sea-washed sunset gates shall stand a mighty woman with a torch whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name, Mother of Exiles. From her beacon hand glows worldwide welcome. Her mild eyes command the air-bridged harbor that twin cities frame. Keep, ancient lands, your storied pomp, cries she with silent lips. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. This is, of course, Emma Lazarus's famous poem, The New Colossus, which, as we all know, is inscribed on a plaque inside the lower level of the pedestal of the Statue of Liberty. Lazarus wrote the sonnet in 1883 as part of a fundraiser for the pedestal, so that we could accept the statue, which was a gift from the French. And ever since the dedication ceremony in 1886, Lady Liberty has beamed her welcome to refugees and immigrants entering the country through New York Harbor. Or consider the following story, with which you might not be as familiar, but which is a true account of an incident that happened at the end of World War II at the Mauthausen concentration camp in Austria. That was the last place that Simon Wiesenthal, who was soon to become a world-renowned Nazi hunter, was imprisoned. On May 6, 1945, when members of the 11th Armored Division of the U.S. Army marched into the camp, they were presented with an extraordinary gift. A group of prisoners had surreptitiously pieced together an American flag with an extra row of stars, 56 instead of the correct 48, because somebody had misremembered the number. They had accomplished this extraordinary feat of incredible resourcefulness in getting the materials, for one thing, and sheer bravery right under the noses of their Nazi captors and the capos, who were the other prisoners who collaborated with the guards in return for better treatment. In response to this moving act of trust and gratitude, Colonel Richard Seibel had the flag proudly flown over the camp as a symbol of freedom. There's even a children's picture book about the incident called The Flag with 56 Stars. Not only is this inspiring account of the liberation of one of the Third Reich's most infamous camps a tribute to the humanity and hope preserved by the survivors, it's also a testament to the way the world viewed Americans at the time. Or take this example, which I remember personally. On the 5th of June, 1973, Canadian journalist and radio personality Gordon Sinclair recorded what would become his most famous daily commentary, which was called simply The Americans. It was inspired by the day's headlines, including the news that the American Red Cross was already out of money for the year because of the unusual number of emergency situations to which they'd had to respond. Sinclair wrote, "As long as 60 years ago, which would be 1913, think of it, 1913, just before the outbreak of World War I. When I first started to read newspapers, I read of floods on the Yellow River and the Yangtze. Well, who rushed in with men and money to help? The Americans did, that's who. They've helped control floods on the Nile, the Amazon, the Ganges, and the Niger. Today, the rich bottomland of the Mississippi is underwater, and no foreign land has sent $1 to help. Germany, Japan, and to a lesser extent Britain and Italy were lifted out of the debris of war by the Americans who poured in billions of dollars and forgave other billions in debts. When the franc was in danger of collapsing in 1956, it was the Americans who propped it up, and their reward was to be insulted and swindled on the streets of Paris. I was there, I saw that. When distant cities are hit by earthquake, it's the United States that hurries in to help. So far this spring, which remember was 1973, 59 American communities have been flattened by tornadoes. Nobody has helped. The Marshall Plan, the Truman Policy, all pumped billions upon billions of dollars into discouraged countries. And now newspapers in those countries are writing about the decadent, warmongering Americans. When the railways of France and Germany and India were breaking down through age, it was the Americans who rebuilt them. When the Pennsylvania Railroad and the New York Central went broke, nobody loaned them an old caboose. Both of them are still broke. I can name to you 5,000 times when the Americans raced to the help of other people in trouble? Can you name to me even one time when someone else raced to the Americans in trouble? I don't think there was outside help even during the San Francisco earthquake. Our neighbors faced it alone, and I'm one Canadian who is damn tired of hearing them kicked around. They'll come out of this thing, which of course was Watergate, with their flag high, and when they do, they're entitled to thumb their noses at the lands that are gloating over their present troubles. I hope Canada is not one of these. At the time, Sinclair considered the piece to be nothing more than one of his usual items. But when the U.S. News and World Report published a full transcript of the commentary, the magazine was flooded with requests for copies. Recorded several times by several different people, one of them was by fellow Canadian news anchor Brian McGregor reading Sinclair's commentary over the air during his radio program, accompanied in the background by an instrumental version of America the Beautiful played by the Detroit Symphony Orchestra, and I remember that one. This version went to number 4 on the Billboard singles chart in February of 1974. But returning to the content of the piece, notice that Sinclair was able to cite numerous examples of American assistance to those in need around the world. And that was over 50 years ago. Just think of how many more examples of American generosity and assistance to others we could name that have taken place in the intervening half-century. There are AIDS, SARS, Ebola, and COVID among the epidemics and pandemics, not to mention our help with the eradication of smallpox, and something so simple as the measles vaccine, which has saved countless lives around the globe because what they found was that those who had the vaccine administered to them were protected against more than just the measles. But then there's our aid to famine-stricken regions like Ethiopia and Darfur, and flood victims in places like Bangladesh. And even if these are examples of both private giving as well as public policy, and even if we've been underappreciated some of the time, I tell you that these are the times when America has been most like the Christian nation some people like to claim that it is. Certainly these are the times when our nation has been the most Christ-like, which is, or should be, one of the major aspects of the Christian religion. So what does it mean to be Christ-like? There's the doing of acts of kindness and charity, of course, but there's another component as well. In his book, How to Read the Bible, Harvey Cox, who was for many years a professor at the Harvard Divinity School, and I see Beulah smiling, in commenting on the work of Israeli scholar Aviva Gottlieb Zornberg, have you heard of her? Oh, you should. Says that she suggests that the first action attributed to God is one of decentralization, a process that continues in the following days of creation as well. In other words, as she explains in her insightful book on Genesis, from the beginning, God busied himself breaking up his unitary and monolithic power into other centers. Paraphrasing the great medieval rabbinic commentator Rashi, she continues, quote, "The main business of that first day of creation was the radical transformation of reality from the encompassing oneness of God to the possibility of more than one," end quote. Rashi and Zornberg give us clearer insight into what the writers of Genesis wanted to convey. More than simply arguing for his oneness, they wanted to describe the character of God. They pictured of God who is intent on compromising his oneness, on sharing his rule by arranging a universe with independent centers of power, even to the point of giving the human being the responsibility to name the animals. The portrait that emerges is of a God who wants to dismantle his monopoly both of being and of power, so that the creation became capable of opposing him, which in turn opened the door for both bane and blessing. And if we take this reading of the creation story to heart, there's an immediate and obvious connection to the great hymn Paul quotes in the 2nd chapter of Philippians. Paul encourages us to be of the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who, being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be grasped, but made himself nothing, taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself, which is Philippians 2, verses 6 to 8a. In other words, Jesus was being his Father's Son in giving up all claims to temporal and political power while he was among us. And just as Christ came to this earth in order to serve rather than to be served, if we would follow him, we're called to be the same. I realize that this is more practical on the individual level than on the international level because of the differing responsibilities of governments and private citizens. But politicians are individuals too, and they can be held to those same moral standards. But it isn't just about sexual morality. Dare I say his name, Ken Starr. To quote Pastor Brandon, a content creator on Facebook, if you push for a Christian nation, but support people who make life harder for the very people Jesus said to love first, your kingdom looks nothing like his. Or this from American Jesuit priest and writer James Martin. What would Jesus say about transferring wealth to the rich? No speculation needed. Woe to you who are rich, for you have received your consolation. Woe to you who are full now, for you will be hungry. Woe to you who are laughing now, for you will mourn and weep, which is Luke 6:24-26. The Reverend Benjamin Kremer has these choice words to say. If our Christianity causes kids to go hungry, the sick to go without health care, the stranger to be unwelcome, the needy to be called parasites, all while billionaires get richer, we have profoundly misunderstood the most basic elements of Jesus' teachings. When I see senators praying for the passage of a bill that will harm the poor, the sick, and the hungry, I think of Isaiah 1:15. When you spread out your hands in prayer, I hide my eyes from you. Even when you offer many prayers, I'm not listening. Your hands are full of blood. The prophet Hosea once remarked, they have sown the wind and they shall reap the whirlwind. Hosea 8:7. Given the shenanigans of our so-called leaders in recent years, is it any wonder that a recent Gallup poll found that Americans' pride in this country has been declining from a high of 91% just after 9/11 to around 58%, which according to the pollsters is near the historic low? The people who describe themselves as extremely proud of this country are down to only 41%. Or, given the passage of a bill one writer describes as crucifixion by policy, is it a surprise that there's a new mural in a French city painted by a Dutch artist which depicts Lady Liberty covering her face in shame It's called the Statue of Liberty's Silent Protest. A few years ago, I told you about when I spent Independence Day in England. I also mentioned that I had discovered Paul Simon's American tune a little before that, and that he cribbed the melody for it from the Passion Chorale, possibly more recognizable to you as "O Sacred Head Now Wounded." Simon's American tune dates from about the same time as Gordon Sinclair's audio commentary on Americans, and both allude to the Watergate scandal, which was really heating up that year of 1973. Simon's lyrics have this to say: "And I don't know a soul who's not been battered. I don't have a friend who feels at ease. I don't know a dream that's not been shattered or driven to its knees. But it's all right, for we've lived so well so long. Still, when I think of the road we're traveling on, I wonder what's gone wrong. I can't help it, I wonder what's gone wrong." Now, we all know that this country has never been perfect. Slavery, Jim Crow, lynchings, and murders like what happened to Emmett Till, which I referenced in the message last week, and the general treatment of the Native Americans, or the various waves of immigrants to our shores, or women, or the disabled, etc., should have taught us that by now. But you don't have to think back very far in order to remember a time when we were renowned for behaving better than either we're behaving ourselves these days, or than we're allowing our so-called leaders to behave. So in closing, let me refer you to the last verse of American Tune, which I feel sums everything up. "We come on the ship they call the Mayflower. We come on the ship that sailed the moon. We come in the age's most uncertain hours and sing an American tune. Oh, and it's all right, it's all right, it's all right. You can't be forever blessed. Still, tomorrow's going to be another working day, and I'm trying to get some rest. That's all, I'm trying to get some rest."